And good morning, good evening, wherever you're seeing us from. Just welcome to We the People. I am your host, Rhodes Pierre. Today, I'm not coming from the dungeon or the laboratory at New Alliance Studios due to, you know, things happening in real life. Life happens. I'm going to be coming from home. And today's guest, the gentleman that I've had, was supposed to have on with us a week or so ago, but things happened again. Life happens, so he's joining us today, and I'd like to actually thank Herb, who's the producer of the show, for coming in last minute last week and filling in and doing the show, being part of the show and stuff. And but again, today, We the People, it's a show about us, the people, not governments, not politicians, but coming in from the grassroots. It's the people that have made the change in the world, not the governments, not politicians. And again, as our friend Dave Chappelle told us on that YouTube special of his, 846, every institution is lied to us. The only people we can trust are people. So always people have their own hidden agendas. But this gentleman right here, I met a little while ago. He's a surprising gentleman because not only is he an administrator, he's involved with lots of real development of our students in the future, but he's also a musician. He's the Haitian brother, and he's an artist, and he's compassionate. But I definitely wanted to have him on the show to talk about what he does and how he helps out the community, and just kind of introduce yourself. Steve, you let us know who you are, brother.
All right, fantastic. Well, good morning, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here on the show. Thank you, Rhodes, for the invitation. And yes, unfortunately, we couldn't make it happen last week. It's not for lack of trying. We were trying to make it work. But thank goodness it's a beautiful Saturday morning, and it's a pleasure for me to be here with everybody. As you shared, my name is Steve Desrosiers, and if you can tell, the Desrosier, my family's telling me, just say Desrosier from now on the way it's supposed to be said.
Desrosier.
You know what I'm saying? Just put it out there. Those who can say it. Those who can't, just forget it. When you first come to this country, it's like you're trying to figure out how to pronounce your last name so you don't get clowned in school. I'm like, how am I going to get through this?
At least you have a normal first name. You have an American first name, all right? You have an English first name. My name is English too, but they never heard of it. So it was like, it was torture.
But at least you have the classic, Pierre. It's like, hey, no matter what, I got this 10-letter monster that I'm like, I don't even know how to pronounce it right. But, originally from Haiti, as you can all probably tell, came in this country when I was about 9 years old. Come from a family of educators. So my dad was an educator, so was my mom in Haiti. And when they transferred over, my mom continued. Actually, she was a board tester for Hewlett-Packard for many, many years. So that was interesting. But I went to school here in Boston, went to Cathedral High School, eventually Boston College, eventually Boston University. And again, I was a history major. When I was about 8 years old, I told my mom, I'm like, Mom, I think I know what I want to be, And she's like, what? I'm like, I want to be a musician. She was like, what?
Exactly. I know Haitian parents. They're like, you in trouble now.
Like, right? You could be a doctor or a lawyer. We don't need no artists in this family. So that began this whole thing where I had, I led a double life intellectually. You know what I mean? I knew that, I had to give her what she wanted academically so that I could keep doing my guitar thing on the ground. So I've always loved music. And it's actually her fault because when I was a little kid, she would just sing to me, every damn morning. She sang to me all these French songs. So I'm thinking, oh, life is about music. You know what I mean? So I'm like, hey, music. And that, the earliest pictures of me have me sing down on the piano and all the rest of it. But interestingly enough, it's weird how things turn out because, I wind up going to BC, becoming a history major. That leads me into thinking either I'm going to do a thing where I become a professor or I go to law school. And for a little while, I wound up going to law school. All the while, keeping up with the music thing. So I was taking lessons, I was studying, I was trying to play with as many musicians as I could locally. I was meeting all kinds of cats and playing on people's albums. I mean, everything I could do just to keep that spirit alive, right? And, just when I thought,
You know, we always got a day hustle and a night hustle. You know, we got just one job. So
That's it. That's it. As an artist, you know, you gotta like, you know, because no one's as soon as you say the music thing, no one's gonna help you. Like, oh, nah, you choosing that. You choosing the stars. So I'm gonna let you start. so, so I was doing that, and then of course doing the school thing, working as well, working my way through college, and you know, once I got out of college, I took it a little more seriously. You know, playing with a lot of bands in the local area, but then I also applied to law school, right? So I wound up getting accepted to New England School of Law. And the interesting thing that happened to me during that time was that I was in law school, and that was when the band Kagimi was coming out of New York. And
mm.
so friends of mine were acquainted with them, and they were looking for a guitar so they could start touring. And I'm like, yo, I gotta take this opportunity. This is no joke. I gotta do this thing. So here I am going to my law classes with my guitar on my back, right? Going into the law library with the guitar on my back. And all the students are looking at me like, what in the world is going on with this dude, right?
Yeah, yep.
Every night I'm over here, you know, I got my books on one hand, I got my guitar on the other hand, preparing for gigs. So I dropped out after the first year, and I that started my whole 2-year thing with Kaimi when they were just starting out. And it led to other things too. I had a heavy interest in Haitian history at the time, so I began to really research Haitian artists, Haitian music, Haitian history. And a friend of mine who is, you know, the husband of Linda Dorsina Fori, who was a state rep for a long time.
Okay.
We all went to BC around the same time, and he started up a small newspaper called the Boston Haitian Reporter. And
Okay.
for 12 years, I worked as their contributing editor.
Oh,
And so
okay.
I wrote on Haitian arts, I wrote on Haitian music. And again, my thing there was to make sure that Haitian Americans who were growing up in Boston and in America who had no sense of the culture and the music of Haiti began to have a place where they could meet that culture in English, right? So we were all writing, you know, this thing in English, so that everybody who had an interest in the culture, who had an interest in Haitians, you know, could read, could understand, could know who the great writers were, could know who the great musicians were, and had an easy access to like the latest albums coming out. So, you know, that was really my focus, you know, during that time. So that was going on. I was touring. I was working at the time for the Boston Public Schools as well. And this was during the No Child Left Behind era. And it was interesting because that time was a time where, you know, George Bush put out this mandate, and people hated him for it because he didn't put any money behind it, right? And
Mm.
so what he did was he required superintendents to find the money in their own budgets to make it work.
Yep, yep.
And so, yeah, it was one of those underfunded programs where every time you got up in the morning, some parent was yelling at you. You know what I'm saying? Because their kid, there was never enough money to get all the kids who qualified for the program in the program. So that began, you know, to kind of like, you know, be a big part of what was going to happen to me, because as I was listening to these parents' concerns for their children, I began to internalize my own mother's struggles with what she had to do to get us into the right schools and the sacrifices she made. And I began to be like, you know what, I got to figure out ways to help families kind of circumnavigate the system, right? Because and I began to find ways to kind of get them into programs if kids didn't use the whole budget that they had for, you know, it was a tutoring program, right? So I began to find ways to put families on wait lists, so that if other families didn't use their budgets up, I would just have a little funnel of families who could access services and all the rest of that. And what began to happen with that was that parents would call me back and show appreciation and show love because they could see the improvements in their children's academics. And that really changed me, man. That kept me in this thing where no matter what I did in education, it had to be around family engagement, helping families navigate the system, and then helping students access the success they could have in the system. So I'm lucky to still be doing this work for the office.
That's awesome. And thank you again for the work and the fact that you're actually helping people achieve or build a gap between education. And sometimes it's the parents not knowing what resources are out there that are available to their students, and just to be able to help them out. And that's like you're bridging that gap. So yeah.
Well, and it's also bureaucrats making it difficult for families to access what they have a right to. You know, if families pay taxes, it shouldn't be a headache for them to access services. And so we have this tradition in this country where we make it very difficult for poor people to get things that they need. And, we've got to change that. We've got to change that.
The comedian in me wants to joke about the fact that if I wanted to apply for unemployment, the paperwork made me go back to just get a regular job. I was like, excuse me, for me to get my unemployment, I just rather go get a job instead of actually trying to fill out all the paperwork and all the hoops you got to make me go through.
Exactly.
I'm like, it's not worth it. Okay.
Exactly, because after all, your money really belongs to the Republicans, right? They'd like to have it so that Wall Street can use it to play the little games they need to play for themselves, and make a they're going to give us some kind of dividends, right?
They're willing to spend money on the prisons, wouldn't they?
Well, their friends own the prisons. Their friends own the prisons, so they got to make that profitable.
Exactly. That's why they got those contracts.
It's that network thing. You got to network. You got to coordinate.
The court system, we own that. We force them to go into prison, and then they got to pay the probation the system. We got to feed us.
That's it. That's it. And you're like, what? How much does it take to maintain? So you won't give somebody unemployment when it takes how much to keep a prisoner in prison?
Mm-hmm.
Like $125,000 per person. I'm like, what are you
it's like, is it $70,000 a year per prisoner? It's $30,000 a year for a student.
Yeah, that's a good job, right? Just give them a salary. Give them a salary, and then you won't have a problem.
And I believe the students actually has potential. Like, while if the prisoner, you just kind of like forcing them to become more criminalized.
Well, here's the thing. I'm not even, because here's the thing. We create criminals with the way we choose to think about talent, human talent, right?
Yes.
We create that. So, like the conversation with my mom, if I was a stubborn kid, I could have been like, yo, forget you, right? I could have just turned on her. And I did. Her and I were friends for a long time.
Yeah.
Because she has an idea of what success is. She has an idea of what, what it means to whatever. So you really have to, I personally subscribe to the tenet that there's no such thing as a lazy person. There's the person that you're making do work that they don't actually like to do. And they have no other way to support themselves.
Yep.
What proved that to me was Malcolm X was a prisoner at one point. Yeah. Malcolm X was, and then what happened? Once he found his calling.
Yes.
In prison.
No, but here's the thing too. Malcolm X wanted to be a lawyer, and they told him because he was in the South. Did you ever read his autobiography? And he was like, "No, you can be. Let's try to be a carpenter. You get a job as a carpenter. No one's gonna hire you here as a lawyer in the South."
Right. So, we create prisoners. We create the achievement gap. That's us.
Yeah.
That's the point. The finger points at us.
Society, and I would say high society, because they don't want all the decisions and all the money, but whatever. They want part of the system too. But
I believe everybody comes here with talents that could make all of our lives richer, and then we consistently tell people, no, here's what's available. Here's what's available. You could be a journalist. You could be this. But I'm like, there's a sense where you limit and you restrict people's natural abilities and restrict their natural enthusiasm, and then when they, when things don't work out and then they act up or they don't adjust to exactly a little model of reality. You want to lock them up. You want to throw away the key. And it's like, between the way you pay people, we let corporations get away with murder in the way they pay us, right? We let them get away with murder in terms of how many times they can dip into the treasury and steal money, just defund society, not build infrastructure. There's a lot.
How do you expect your packages to get there without the roads and the bridges,
How do you call yourself a patriot when your trucks are all over these streets, right?
Yeah.
Your Amazon trucks are all over the place delivering packages. You don't want to pay you want no part of paying for the maintenance of any of those roads. Yeah. Right? And that's the capitalist mindset. And as a history major, one of the things I could tell you, one of my critiques is like, when Americans first got here, we as Haitians were making Haiti really rich for the French.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And the system of slavery that the French had in Haiti was like, oh no, we're gonna work them to death. That's like, we're not trying to maintain these people. We're gonna work them to death. And that's where Americans got this nucleus of an idea for capitalism, like the market economy, right? That's where that came from. They saw how rich this little island got just by abusing people as much. And they're like, we're gonna do that too. We're gonna do it. So what you see is a transplant of
we can do it better. We're Americans. We can do it better than the French.
Well, here's the thing, man. Hey, listen, we couldn't have had our freedom without the French. They actually helped us finance the revolution.
No, exactly. America
would
not be where it is today.
Americans can't say nothing about if you see how much of America France owned at the time, you'd be shocked, right?
Yeah.
So
So
it's
everything
coming
from
from Canada.
Louisiana on to
Yeah,
California that
yeah.
was French.
No, straight to Canada.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, so it's like all the way up to Vancouver, kind of. And so there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to think about. We're living in interesting times. But anyhow, you said we weren't going to get into politics or anything like that. Let me take it away from the politics.
That was just a little bit of history. That wasn't too much politics, you know what I'm saying? But like since like you've been helping out families and stuff like that, and you've been able to get them to find the resources that they need for their families, like as far as that goes, like what is going to be happening for the children next year? Like how is that going to be affecting them?
So we
What
were
are they come back and
it's
stuff like
funny.
that?
Yeah, so we're all trying to figure it out. As you can see, COVID is we really have to wait and see what the science does. There are two things that are going to determine what happens in a couple of weeks. Because everybody's in a different place with where their comfort level with where we are with the disease, with testing, and all the rest of it, right? So a lot of families, we were on a call last week with the superintendent, as a matter of fact. A lot of families are anxious to get the kids back in, but what she said was very true. It's like, to the extent that everybody's following the rules and wearing masks and isolating the way they're supposed to, there's a possibility that we could kind of have a hybrid model where, for part of the day, kids are in classrooms, and then there's, certain days where they're not in schools. But there's a whole lot that we're still having to learn about: how this disease works, how it spreads, whether or not it's safer to have things outdoors or indoors, what our ventilation systems are doing. There's a whole bunch of things that have to be taken into account that, it's not going to take a couple of months to figure out. It's going to be the kind of thing where we have to wait to see what we've had instances where I think in New Zealand, they opened up schools and then they had to close them up again. They thought that just having the kids in the classrooms with a little bit of distancing and the masks were going to be okay, but then they got this, surge of people getting sick and had to close it up again. So we're still understanding the nature of this particular virus. It doesn't impact everybody the same way. We're very concerned about what it could do to kids. We're concerned about what's going on if adults are in the room and they're carrying kids. What's the transfer of this, stuff like.
No, I was gonna say is the fact that if they get infected, they go back home and get the whole family or the household sick.
Got it.
And the primary thing that they're trying to do, I don't know, is like if it's you and me, but it seems like they're trying to get like the minorities back into school first. And then they're gonna figure it out afterwards. They're like, okay, now we'll get the kids in the suburbs after we've tested out the kids in the inner city.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. But like I said, it's up in the air. I think a lot of people are looking at September, and they're still, the jury's still out for the most part, because I think teachers are expressing some anxiety. They want to see something that feels more like a hybrid model, and we have to. It's a true challenge. It's truly challenging because it really is everybody doing everything they can to keep themselves in good health and to make sure that they're practicing the safe practices that we know about, and then making sure that at the school level, if we do wind up opening schools, that there's enough soap, enough hand washing thing, enough enough what do you call it,
Sanitizer
to make sure that
But again, the kids are like germ factories. They got
they
boogers,
really
like young ones. They got the boogers all over their face. They look at you and you're like, yo, you got them dirty hands. Don't touch you with them dirty hands. They're like eating, grubbing food. They don't care if it's like sometimes their hands be in their pants.
all that.
Put your hands in your pants, like,
All that.
So
they're little kids, right? They're still getting to know themselves. They're still adjusting to all the emotions that are going on with them. They don't understand why they have to be so serious. Like we.
Like, I have fun. I'm a child. Exactly. How do you do that? How do you get a child to be really like practice social distancing? Because part of growing up is touching, running around, playing to each other. Like it's.
And this is the thing. I think personally, my feeling is like for the time being, we should be patient. Yeah. Because if anything, I think until we come up with a vaccine, we should keep our children home, and then work with teachers to make sure it's a great opportunity to think about whether or not we can slow the rat race down a little bit. Right? There's a rush to what? We should talk to exactly. Like, people need a 6-hour workday, right? Mm-hmm. They need a 6-hour workday or a 5-hour workday. Maybe they work 7 days a week, but they work for a number of hours so that they can mind the kids at home because there's a pandemic out there. And until we get a vaccine, that will help us just get back to normal, right? you
Yep.
know, we can resume after the
And
vaccine.
then we got to make sure the vaccine's actually been properly tested.
Exactly.
Not
Well, they're rushing. Well,
cronies.
yeah. My big thing is now that everybody's rushing to test the vaccines, right? They're rushing to get it out there, and I'm like, you know what? I don't even.
No.
You know, if you're in a restaurant and you hear that the chef is rushing your gourmet meal, there's a party that's like, nah, I'm about to pay about $300 for the steak. If you need an hour,
take the time.
An hour to get my steak right. Take an hour to get my steak right because this is costing me this much. And to me, when I think about, you know, especially the lives of young children, you know, that's where all bets are off. You know, all considerations have to be serious. I'm not trying to rush little kids back to class so that they can spread this thing and then end up sick.
What happens if we lose the whole generation? Like, you know, if we lose the youth, like what's gonna happen to society? Like, seriously. You know? Like, we're supposed to be protecting them. Like, not, and unfortunately, because of the way society is, they're the ones that are actually out there protecting us. They're the ones protesting. They're the ones going to, you know, saying, "Oh, this stuff is wrong here" and stuff like that.
Absolutely. You know, they're the ones who got Trump to go in the bunker. So.
Oh my goodness! I even think about that. Yes. Okay. He's afraid of children. But like,
well, high schoolers, those high schoolers, man, we got
keep them out there, like. So like part of education and stuff like that. Like, so what do you feel about them being out there protesting? Like, how do you look at the people out there protesting, especially with the Black Lives Matter movement, the COVID-19? What do you think about that?
I think it's awesome. I think it's wonderful. I think the protests are very necessary in that telling us right now, you know, what kind of a society we actually do live in. What kind of a society we do live in. The Black Lives Matter movement is a response to ongoing police brutality. And this police brutality that Malcolm X was talking about in the 60s. And Malcolm X died in 364. And this has not been an incessant part of what taxpayers have to pay for. When they think about the kind of policing Black communities get, right?
And that's the thing. I mean, like, to jump on the Trump point, and then what he was talking about when Black Lives Matter, and you know how Trump pointed out, oh, more white people die from police. So yeah, the system is systematic brutality, police brutality. So injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. If they're doing this to Black people, just because we're highlighting the fact that it's happening to Black people, it's actually happening to more white people. You know, y'all should be joining us in this protest because it affects you as well.
Well, here's the thing. The protests are multiracial, aren't they?
Yes, they are. Yes, they absolutely are.
They're global. So we're talking about, what I like about the protests is that we can't talk about it as a national phenomenon. It's also a global phenomenon.
Yes.
And it's talking about the nature of policing everywhere. And the nature of policing poor people everywhere.
Yes, yes, right? Yes.
So I think this is a moment because it's like elites across the world are realizing that, you know, either they're going to get more aggressive or they're going to share the means of production with the rest of us, right? And it's bringing to fore all of these injustices that we haven't really dealt with in a serious way, right? We haven't confronted, you know, people going around their entire lives being harassed, being shot, destitute, no money for bail, no proper education system, no proper housing, no insurance, no health care. And this is just America, so I'm not even talking about. I'm like, talking about third world country, right?
No healthcare, no what?
This was Haiti I was talking about right now.
Yeah, this is America. Well, actually, because of Trump, I really feel like we've now turned into a third world country. The way he's being a dictator, the way he's like dismissing the press, the way he's just kind of like saying like, yo, I'm going to say what I got to say. I don't care if it's a lie. I don't care if it's untrue, but I'm saying it because I'm the leader and y'all better follow along. It really seems more like a dictator than a democracy to me, anyway. But again,
that's exactly what he's aiming for. That's why he's allied with strong men. And it's interesting because now we're getting a sense of how he ran his casinos and why bankruptcy was a big part of his, you know, his life throughout his life. Why everything went bankrupt.
Oh, right? Did you see about the book about his cousin or
niece? His niece wrote that book.
Yeah, and
I haven't gotten it yet.
Like, essentially, he was trying to rob her of $1 billion and said, you only get $30 million of your inheritance, and it was worth $1 billion. Right. And it was just kind of like they did some scheming, lying, like to your own family, dude. The money's going to stay within your family anyway. And he was still trying to steal it from her.
Here's a guy who was trying to take from his own father.
Yeah.
Right? until,
Yeah.
until his older siblings intervened somehow. But you know what? He was raised by his dad to be what, a killer, right? I think
Yeah.
that was tradition. So you got what you wanted,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? That's how daddy raised him. And so it's incredible to kind of see this full circle, because
Okay.
what she's talking about is not, no, he was raised to be this thing.
Yes.
When older brother couldn't fit the mold and killed himself, I think older brother's her father.
Yep. Yep.
Here you have the outcrop
Yep.
of
Exactly.
right.
Oh,
And here's the thing. That's not. I don't always want to say Trump, because there are plenty of, when you're thinking about these alpha personalities that Europeans, like, the American likes to put forth.
hmm
These guys who own businesses and expect their sons to take over the business and all the rest of that. There's a narrative running there where they raise their sons a certain way, and there's a toughness, and there's this,
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and life is this, and it's
Yep.
and you get what you get.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
you get. So what do we have? Like, the environment's going to waste, the ozone layer is depleted.
Mhm.
There's oil all over the Haitian, the oceans. Wildlife is coming up with plastic, and we don't know what we're eating anymore. We don't know about if we can actually trust what's coming out of the sea. I mean, we've completely you know we have to take a minute to kind of
We've destroyed it for
pause.
profits for
Yeah.
profits. We destroyed
What
it
are
for
our values? How are we raising our young men? Are we
yeah.
using their energies in the right ways?
Yeah.
And is capitalist system the best way? Is this the only way to do things? Like, this is awful. People
Yeah.
are not getting paid what they need to get paid. They
Yeah.
can't afford rent, and then never mind being able to afford healthcare. And here we have this COVID situation, right? It's a perfect storm.
Mhm.
Because I think COVID is also tied to the fact that we've changed our natural environment. We've cut down a whole bunch of trees. We've made ourselves weaker as a result of the weakness, what we forced upon our natural environment. There is an imbalance there where we're, toxifying the whole place. We are taking habitat from animals that used to have homes in the forest. We're playing this zero-sum game, and we're not winning. We're
No,
not winning right now.
absolutely
We
not.
really
No, because I mean, the bottom line is Mother Nature. Like, I mean, you want to prove to me your laws are really like that powerful? Try to outlaw earthquakes, tornadoes, poverty. Like they want to outlaw things that can actually help you, like Mother Nature. Like you can't collect rainwater. The marijuana plant, which they know is proven, they have a patent for it as a medicinal plant. But no, that's illegal. We don't want people just growing their own natural medicine. Like, so the food they're destroying with chemicals, like genetically modifying it, so again they can grow and have specific. They're picking the winners in nature, but again, Mother Nature is stronger than we're part of Mother Nature, and we got to realize that we can't control it
I
the way
think it's always, well, I think we're always so impressed by our own intelligence, right? I don't know what it is. It's like, Mother Nature will put out one little virus. I mean, this is a little tiny virus, and
yeah.
thousands dying. And I'm like, people should take heed to things, because I remember, I don't know if you know your Bible, but the Old Testament, the story of Pharaoh, right? And all the plagues that kept impacting Egypt.
Yeah.
And Egypt was one of the most powerful empires at the time, right?
Yep.
I'm sure the kings weren't thinking that some little viruses or some little whatever was just going to destroy their whole, that this was the beginning of the end, right?
Yep.
But if you think about the plagues, we should look at this like that. This is a humbling plague for the entire world. And it's like, listen,
absolutely.
if we want you out of here, we could have you out of
No,
here.
Mother Nature can definitely wipe us out if it wants to. Like I said, you mentioned the virus. I'm just thinking about natural disasters like earthquakes, tornadoes, volcanoes, and stuff like that. And I'm like, So yes, even with the virus, I've proven the fact that we're part of it, and there's nothing we like. No matter how smart we think we are, there are things that we can't predict, and we can't prepare for. You know what I mean? So, well, we can prepare for them, but we just can't predict. This was definitely not something that we were predicting.
Yeah, and there's a balance. We can regulate things in a way that's gives our children a sense of balance, so that they grow up thinking, what we can respect. There are boundaries there are excesses that we have to watch out for. Mm-hmm. There's a balance to life, just like you're in a marriage. Just because you're married to a woman, you walk into your house, well, you used to be able to, smack her up or whatever, but we've learned from that generation. Hopefully we've learned from that generation. But this is the thing, it's a marriage, and there's a modicum of respect that you have to bring to your home.
I will agree. I mean,
right?
Yes, the Native Americans, again, one of the reasons why they got rid of them was the fact that they did not believe in ownership. They're like, no,
Right.
how can you own it? Like the tree, the river, the mountains here when you got here, and when you die, the tree, the river, and the mountain's still gonna be here. How is it yours? It belongs to
Exactly.
God. God gave us it so we can take care of it. It doesn't belong to us. We are going here, and they were like, the whole concept of ownership. That's why they got rid of the Native Americans. They did try to enslave them.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Of
they
course.
tried, but they were
You know,
like,
they're like, we have this new invention called the fence. Let me show you how you can own.
and they were like, no, and they were like, how the hell you charging those for trespassing? You know what I mean? Like the animals go through the fence too and stuff like that. Yeah, they were just kind of like, they're like, you can't own the land. They're like, they're like, yes, we can. They're like, no, you can't. And they were like, so it was just to me, it's just kind of like a whole.
That's what, you know, history is interesting because I mean, people. You just wonder what in the world is this experiment, man, with human beings? Like what are we doing? Like why are we so maladjusted compared to other animals in this planet? You know what I'm saying? It just speaks. I'm like, we've got to be from some alien race because we just don't make sense.
No, we don't. Like,
don't
no other animal has prisons. No other animal pays rent or to pay to live here. They just kind of like, yo, it's there, let's eat. It's like, well, again, we're very fragile as far as like we need the shelter. Like all the other animals can live outside and be free, you know, fly, do whatever they want to, and it won't bother them. But we need to be sheltered.
I mean, it's a challenge, man. I just think what a human personality is, and it's like philosophically, there's so much diversity. There's so many mindsets.
Yep.
It's just, you know, it's meant to be. It's like wired for conflict, really. You know what I mean? I guess maybe if we really think about it from a historical perspective, we've always been trying to off somebody. I'm into watching these series on Netflix that have to do with Chinese history, and I love it because politically it's complicated, right? The storylines are really rich, but man, the warring between the old time Chinese factions is out of control. And I'm like, did we really just kill and butcher this many people? And if you look at the different great empires and continents, yeah, we did. I think.
You ever heard that book called Man? You ever heard the book called Man? You ever heard the book called Man is War?
No, I haven't.
That's always like, seriously, all of our history basically kind of like goes, it's basically a whole outline of wars that we've had. That's how and like a lot of our technology.
It's crazy because the Aztecs had this thing. It was like, well, you know what? If the gods require a certain amount of blood from everybody every year, why don't we just give it to them? We'll choose some people to just kill every year. That way, once the bloodthirst is accomplished, once we meet our blood quota, then everybody can go back to
Wow, I did not know that was the reason why they did the bloodletting and the sacrifice. They were like, oh, we don't want to fight. Let's just kind of give them some blood, and that way we don't have to fight. All right?
They thought that. Yeah, they thought that the gods required a certain amount of blood that to be shed every year, so they would do it, and then
there would be no war. Wow. Okay.
Keep the wars to a minimum, but it's incredible. When you think about just every culture, every society, you can't point to one that doesn't have this warring, bloodletting, that has to happen.
Well, yeah, that's true. Well, the whole thing is, it's like, I guess, like the concept of like, hey, in order for us to live, we have to eat. In order for us to eat, something's gotta die.
Right.
The plant, like, it gets rejuvenated or whatever goes through us, but part of our survival is the fact that death is included as part of our survival. Unfortunately, yeah. So
that's where we reach our limitations as human beings, right? Because some things I think just are hard to understand, hard to explain. It would be great. It would make sense for human beings to just be attracted to plants to eat, right? Well, not only have we been known to eat animals and fish and whatever, but we have no problems when it gets bad enough to eat one another. So there is cannibal culture.
Wow. Yes.
Well, it's an incredible.
Do other animals eat each other when things get bad?
I don't know, but I'm gonna guess. That's gotta happen.
Yeah.
I was reading about some species that they eat their babies if they need to, and in lions if they want to get a
Yeah,
finger
that's true.
lion, whatever.
Yeah,
They'll
if it's
kill the
wrong,
calf.
if it's the offspring
You
of a
know,
lion, they'll eat
I
the
guess it's
little
just a
lion.
big. Maybe the Earth itself is a tragic place, and we just need to adjust and accept it's
Oh
required for
man.
tragedy.
Yeah. Well. Like, we actually wanted to talk also about, like, I get the fact of, like, like during the COVID thing, we were going to talk about trying to set up a book club.
Yeah.
Yeah, you remember? And then so I wanted to kind of like make an announcement about that before, because I know we're running out of time. So I wanted to like kind of like talk about that and then be like, hey, during this time, like, we're trying to like enlighten ourselves, keep ourselves informed. Unfortunately, because of the way the news has gotten and the fact that they have to report what this guy is always saying, and that's another thing I don't like, the fact that media does not correct him or just say right then and there, it's a lie. These are the facts. This guy is, not,
Yeah.
giving you the correct picture or frame and stuff like that. You mentioned the fact that you're watching this Netflix series on the Chinese dynasties and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And then so like that, like you're a history buff. What other kind of history things have you been like into?
So I've been a history major. I'm big on the books that have to do with ancient, what we would call, we call this era the New World, but Old World history. So the founding of Egypt. So historians like Ivan van Sertima and people who talk about the African presence in early Europe, the Moors of Spain. The
I've
conquerors who
heard
came
of that, but
from
like,
Spain.
would you recommend a book that we could read on that particular
Yes.
subject?
Give me 1 second so I can run to my library and grab one of the books.
Okay. Again, thank you again for tuning into We the People. This is Steve Desrosier, musician, educational administrator. This guy, again, is around trying to help the community, and just wanted to kind of introduce him to We the People. Notice that he's got the guitar back there. I love artists, musicians, because I myself, again, I do my day job, but I also do stand-up comedy.
All right, so I have my books aren't like, what do you call it? Alphabetized. So I'll show you this one. But this is work like, this particular book is called African Presence in Early Europe. And so there's so much of our own history that we don't know, that I've made it a point to go back and discover and understand that history. And that's understanding Egypt, understanding the wars that led Africans into Europe.
Yep.
A lot of folks don't know that Africans were basically ruling a lot of Europe for about 800 years prior to Columbus. And that's where a lot of the racism that we experience today comes from, right?
Okay.
Just really getting into a knowledge even of what slavery was, what the day-to-day experience was, what the crossing was like, slave societies in Brazil. So there are a lot of, for me, the historian in me needs to be fed that information so that I'm well versed in my own story, both before we got here as Africans and then after here, right? Yeah. So one of the things that I found fascinating was that there was a big tradition of Black Muslims who got enslaved, who found themselves in places like Haiti and Jamaica and Brazil. And those guys had the equivalent of PhDs. They were very educated, Arabic speaking and Arabic writing people, right? So they were just, a lot of them got kidnapped as a result of losing wars or whatever. And then they found themselves on a slave ship with a whole bunch of other Africans coming over here. But the significance of knowing that is that once they get to the Americas, they're really the ones who are leading slave insurrections, right? Not only are they, they're trying to educate uneducated Africans, but they're also leading slave insurrections, right? So in Haiti, particularly, when we think about the names of our early revolutionary leaders, like before Toussaint, like guys like Boukman, right? And Padre Jean, like they were warrior priests, right? So Boukman was like the name itself, they were calling that guy man of the book. And in Muslim circles, a man of the book is a scholar, is basically a Muslim scholar. And this guy was basically not only a badass warrior, he had the equivalent of a PhD, which is why he got the respect that he did.
Yep.
He was so competent that people didn't want to just kill him. So I'm like, okay, why didn't you just kill this guy? Because he was in Jamaica originally, right?
Yeah.
Well, they ship him from Jamaica to Haiti, and in Haiti, he basically starts off the insurrection that's going to lead to our liberation. Padre Jean, that name we usually say as Padre Jean. He's one of our early liberators. It literally means Father Jean, but it's a Spanish
Ah,
padre, right?
Padre Jean. Yeah,
Right?
Father Jean. Yeah, yeah.
Father Jean. What is he? Well, he's another one of those Muslim warrior priests. And
Ah,
that'll help you understand why in Vodou, when the women dressed in white, when those Muslims are going into battle, because to them, being Muslim was an identity, right? It wasn't like a religion. They didn't, it was who they were. So they would dress in white in order, for the sanctity and for the purity of the jihad to happen. You know what I'm saying? So they dressed in white before they went off and did that thing in battle. And so when you look at voodoo ceremonies and the symbolism of wearing white, when you look at a lot of paintings of Wakaiman, or the voodoo ceremony that led to the liberation of Haiti, they're dressed in white. When you look at the way Black Brazilians dress when they do their ceremonies and all the rest of that, whiteness, dressing in white, you know what I'm saying?
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
yeah, so it's tied to all that. So I've gotten into really brushing up and rediscovering a lot of that history, because I read it in college as a student, but now I'm at a point where I need to read it to retain it.
Yeah.
And use it. I do use it when I do workshops with families. So, we talked about the work with BPS. When we do workshops with families around history, or when I recommend books, children's books, for parents who want to, figure out how to begin to talk about racism to their kids. Sometimes I'm able to point them to books that do a little bit of that work, but a lot of it is like reconnecting to like scholars like this who did this serious work, where they help us to connect the dots, about who we were as a people, what we came over here with, so that the narrative that, we were worthless slaves who didn't have literacy, who didn't have culture and all the rest of that, so that we can interrupt that.
Gotta stop. Exactly. You got to get the truth out there.
Yeah.
And so, like,
And so
this
that's
is
why
like,
the book club thing is important. Yeah.
yeah. And unfortunately, this is where we're kind of like have to be like, all right, we're gonna have to do part 2. Right?
Yeah.
You're gonna have to come back.
Ah.
We don't know next week or whatever, but we definitely have to have you back on, and we're definitely gonna seriously talk about like the history that's like forgotten or erased or tried to, they try to suppress. And then talk about different, because again, I never heard of Padre Jean, and I never heard of Bookman. So it's like I've only heard of Toussaint Louverture, but no, I never heard of those two. Did not know about that part of our history.
A whole bunch of them. Yeah.
So I definitely yes, I would definitely like continue this conversation and stuff. Steve Desrosier, thank you, my brother. Merci beaucoup. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, hey, we got to keep the truth alive, and we got to like basically let the people know and spread the word. And again, that's why we the people. And as I say, it's like yes, the people. Okay, like yes, we all are the people, but yes to the people. Again, right. To refer back to Dave Chappelle, every institution that we know in this world has lied to us, from religion to government to whatever it is. It's an institution. They have their own agenda. It's to trust the people. And thank you for the young people that are still out there protesting. Keep the word out there, keep the truth out there, fight for the truth. And
that's right.
I'd like to say again.
And I want to I'll say one last thing, the defund movement is important, because what these police are doing there right now is they're coming up to protesters in unmarked vehicles, and they're just grabbing these and I'm talking about these young kids, like high schoolers, right? So if you look at just hop on Facebook and just.
They're kidnapping the children. They're literally kidnapping the children.
They're literally just taking the kids, and they're dressed in fatigues. They're taking the kids, putting them in unmarked vehicles. If they're not police vehicles, then are they headed to a station or not, right? So I think we have to pay attention, because we're likely in a place where this is becoming, this nation is heading towards dictatorship.
Oh, absolutely.
And we have to use our power as parents, as taxpayers, to stand up. It can't be that you think that your contribution is, I'm going to get up and go to work today, and I'm going to mind my business, and somehow this is going to work itself out. You will be made. This will hit your family at some point.
Yep.
It's a monument of time, but this is a democracy, and we have a role to play to make sure that these kids are safe and they have a right to protest. These police are not independent entities. A lot of these guys can barely read a law book. They did not go to law school. They were not properly trained. They have these quotas that they have to meet for people who are equally as unwell read and unsophisticated as they are.
Yes.
So we have a police department that can't understand basic philosophy. And basic philosophy would be like, I also have to protect the people who are doing criminal things out there, because they're still American citizens.
Yes.
Until that citizenship is taken away, I still have to protect even the bad guy, because that bad guy has rights. We don't have a generation of police who respect that.
Yeah.
They have no worries putting their
needs.
Even after George Floyd, there's still enough video out there of them.
Yeah, of people still doing it. Yes,
still doing it. So they're sending us a message, and I think I'll just end on that note. The protests are important because we started talking about the protests. The protests are important. Getting our knowledge together is important, but continuing this conversation and making sure that we expect our politicians to defund police across this nation is really important, because a lot of these guys are they're doing the white power thing behind our backs, and we have to find a way.
No, absolutely. And if you absolutely look
at defund, reimagine policing across this nation.
No, absolutely. And that's the thing. If we kind of look at all the protests throughout the years and everything, every time people have gotten forward to put a movement together, by the time they could get to the table to actually talk about it, the narrative has changed. They've basically taken away the people that can actually make the real change. Like in the 1960s, there's no accident that, in order to maintain the status quo, that JFK, RFK, and MLK and MX were all gone. So that's a coup d'etat, my brother. They're like, yo, you elected these leaders, the leaders you thought you could elect, ain't gonna happen either. All right. So brother, again, thank you. I want to continue this conversation. I want to say bless you. And you know what I'm saying? Like when I get the link, I'll let the people know, and then I'll send you the link so that way you can spread it out amongst your friends. And I look forward to, like I said, let's get this book club thing going. We can make an announcement.
Yes, I'm with it.
Sure.
What I want to do is let's start off with reading all the writers of the Harlem Renaissance.
Okay. That's it's like a great way to start, like Americanize it, and then we can spread it out further beyond that. That's awesome. Like anything, last thing you'd like to say before we go?
Let me see. I think this is, this is an important moment. I think we've been given an opportunity to slow down and to really think, about how we would like to go forward as a nation. And it's important for us to take that time to do exactly that. I got another harassing letter from my Comcast this morning about the fact that, I owe them money and all the rest of it. I'm like, something, this has to be thought of as a utility right now. Y'all are escalating my bill by, whatever percentage, ridiculous percentages. And it would be one thing if my neighbors were paying the same as I was, right? We're all paying different rates according to our ability to finagle the conversation with Comcast every year, right? So there's a conversation we need to have with corporate America about how things are going to go going forward, because it can't be that in every single situation, from the car dealership to the supermarket to Comcast to whatever, everybody's looking to either take a piece of arm, a piece of your leg, half of your nose, half of your brain, so that they can return dividends to shareholders. Right? We got to get away from this whole shareholder mentality, right? There's a lot more that we can do with the talent that we have, with the businesses that we have, and we have to have a whole other conversation around how we share resources, all of it, man. There's no need for people to be going without. As much as we produce, as much money is actually available, there's no reason for us to tolerate the kind of nonsense that we tolerate. It's just, as a community of people, we need to come together and think in a sensible way about, my neighbor deserves a nice, comfortable house. If I enjoy having a nice, comfortable house with the bills paid, no headaches, and my neighbor also deserves to know that. His kids deserve to know that. And that'll do something about the prison population right there. Anyhow, I encourage everybody to take time to think. Take this time to rethink everything.
I will take that advice. Take time to think. It is, because again, we've been running around, just the whole capitalist system is like, literally, you feel like your head's decapitated and you just got to keep running around like a chicken, paying the bills just to survive.
Right. So I invite folks, check out Comcast. The way Comcast gives you your bill, they're passing on the entire cost of their doing business to you, the consumer. Yeah. Look at the bill breakdown. Look at the fees and some fees they don't even bother explaining. Right? It's just a fee. So that's so yeah, we gave you the $89.99 program, but all these other fees got you to $130 a month or $150 a month, right?
Yeah.
When you look at the fees, we're paying the entire cost of their doing business.
Yeah.
So you know what? Wouldn't you love it? You want to be a comedian, but you could just pass on to the audience your gas bill. Hey, I wore this outfit for y'all, so y'all gotta pay me. Each of y'all gonna split the cost of my outfit, and then I also need to drive a Mercedes So each y'all gonna pay. You know, imagine if that's how the
No.
entry fee was
Yeah.
calculated to be part of a comedy show. It's ridiculous what these guys are getting away with. And it's because the politicians, you know, they've got that lobbyists in Washington.
Yeah, poor people vote and rich people lobby.
Yeah,
So,
you know, so we got to get away from that entire system.
yep.
That's got to end.
So we're gonna end it right there because I guess like we've run out of time. Herb, thank you again for being a great producer. Sorry about going over a little bit over. We
We
the
got
people, thank you
11:15.
for
We're just
tuning
right there.
in. Well, thank you for tuning in, and we'll check in with you guys next week. And just like us, follow us up on Facebook, and then spread the word and and support the protesters. Thank you
Absolutely.
again, and you guys have a good night, a good day, and enjoy. We the people.